Welcome to episode 12 of the FibreBound Podcast. My name is Alexandra and I am coming to you today from Adelaide, Australia, where I live with my husband, our 2 teenage sons and our lovable dog, Shorty. I'm losing my voice. You can find me on Instagram as FibreBound and I am also on Ravelry as Ali Pay. You will also find a Ravelry group for this podcast and I'll link all of that down below in the description bar. Everything I talk about today, shops, products, projects that I talk about will all be outlined in the description below, and I'll try to pop links where I can so that you can look into the various projects and things that I talk about today. This is predominantly a knitting podcast, and today it is just knitting. Sometimes there is crochet or other crafts, but it's been a very knitty 2 weeks. I have one finished object to show to you today and quite a few whips. I feel like my whips have gone a little bit out of control, but I'm enjoying working on every single one of them, and it's really bringing me so much joy to see progress on each of these items. So let's start the podcast with my finished object. Just one today, and today the only finished object I have are my DK vanilla socks. So this is those. Now I talked about these in the last episode. They are a design by the crazy sock lady, Kay Litton. They are, it is a free pattern on Ravelry, and I have knit these in Knit Picks, stroll fingering, yarn held double, and I used a grey, I think it's Dove Heather, and the navy is Sapphire Heather perhaps. I'll pop all the details down below for you. So these were a joy to knit up. They were so quick and easy. I made the medium size in the pattern. It's a free pattern, so I think it's a 48 stitch sock. I knit these on 9-inch circulars up until I got to the toes, and then I did change my method, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I did a 2x2 rib, and I think it's 10 rows of the 2x2 rib. I did the leg a little bit longer than outlined in the pattern. These are for my husband and he likes a longer leg, and even though I did lengthen it, I think he still would have liked it a little bit longer. But I was a little bit worried that I might run out of the yarn, so I didn't want to risk that. I didn't run out. I totally could have done an extra few rounds there for him, an extra maybe 10 rounds to give some length, but it's fine. He will love these anyway. So there I think are 50 rounds for the leg there. I think it's 50. Then I did a heel flap and gusset, and I decided to use a contrast heel flap and heel turn, mainly because I was using these Knit Picks balls, like they're 50-gram balls each, and I was really worried that given that I'd added a little bit of length to the leg, I may, and he's got quite a long foot, I may run out of that combination of yarns. And yeah, so it was just basically, I knew I had extra navy in my stash, so I used that for the heel and the toes of these socks. And then I knit his foot down to the rounded toe as written in the pattern. I basically followed the pattern exactly. The modification for the heel flap that I made though, in terms of adding a contrast colour, when I do that, I will drop my main yarn halfway through the round, pick up my new colour, do the other half of the round in the contrast to start the heel flap, and I make the heel flap, and when I pick up, I'm picking from the opposite side, so I start my beginning of round in a different spot than the pattern is written, and that just makes it I guess straightforward for me. I'm not picking up with one colour and then have a gap before I have to pick up with the other colour. So yes, this was a very enjoyable knit. I really sped through these. I don't feel like I spent much time on them, even though they did take just over 2 weeks for me to knit. I literally cast off the second toe right before I pressed record today. I may show you some footage of me kitcheneering that final toe, maybe at the start or at the end of this episode. Just for funsies, I thought that might be nice to show. And, you know, a little bit of behind the scenes, real life, get the knitting done sort of stuff. And yes, no other modifications that I can recall. Now, when I mentioned that I switched to a different method for the toes here, for the first toe, so this marker, just by the way, this marker is by Lovebird Lane. So this is a local to me maker. And this marker is showing where I was when I recorded last. So I finished the rest of this foot and then knit the second whole sock in between recording since I saw you last. So yes, I got to the toe, and obviously once you decrease down a few rounds, there's not really enough stitches on the needles to make 9-inch circulars work brilliantly for you. So I did switch for the first foot to my DPNs. Don't love DPNs, I think I've said this before, but I find them really fiddly, and there's just these needles that are attached, and yeah, I don't love using DPNs. It really was not my favorite way to finish that toe. So when I got to the bottom of the second toe, I pulled out my Addy Crazy Trio set, which I'm trying to grab. So I pulled these out instead. They're like the Higher Sharps, or sorry, Higher Flyers, but they're an Addy version. And yes, I finished the second toe using these, and it was a much more enjoyable experience for me. Basically, yeah, I just enjoy the 3 needles much more than I enjoy the 5 needles of a DPN. And I know that I could have split the stitches up to have perhaps 3 needles holding the yarn and 1 needle to work with, but regardless, I just find DPNs a bit cumbersome. They're quite long and they're quite frustrating for me. I just don't love that process. So I do encourage you to try those either Higher Flyers or the Addy Crazy Trios. Their tips are a little bit blunter than the Higher Flyers, but I actually do like both. I can't really complain about either one of them, given that I've used those ones a very minimal amount. There's really not much I can say that's bad, actually no bad things at all. I actually did really enjoy using them. So I don't think I mentioned I knit these on the recommended needle size, which is a 3.25mm needle, which I think is a US 3 off the top of my head. And yeah, we've got a pair of socks that realistically I could have knit in a couple of days, but as you'll see, I was distracted with a lot of other projects at the same time. So that is my only finished object for today. I do have a half finished object though. So when Summer Sock Camp started, so Summer Sock Camp is a knit along that I am participating in, which is hosted by Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady. It goes up until the end of August, so I cast these on sometime in June, I think, maybe early July, and I absolutely love this pattern. This pattern was provided to VIP campers as a free download for us, and then it went on sale to the general public, I think at the start of August, so I'll link that down below for you. But I finished my first camp picnic sock, and this is a pattern by Kay, the Crazy Sock Lady. I really love the texture of this. The little cables here, they're all done without a cable needle, and Kay gives a link to, I think it was a tutorial on how to do that, which within the pattern, which made it a very simple, enjoyable knit and quite an easy pattern repeat realistically. I do have Kay's stitch marker progress keeper there, so that's the Summer Sock Camp 2021 progress keeper that I'm just keeping there. This is where I was the last time I showed it to you. So I just knit the rest of this foot, and I also cast on the second sock. Oops. I also cast on the second sock. There's not much of the second sock to show you really. It's just a tiny little, oh, like a moustache. I saw someone else do that recently and I thought that was quite funny, and now I'm doing it. So yes, so we've started that. It's a 2x2 rib start. I think I've done 3 rows, maybe 4, 3 rows so far. And yeah, get these started. So I'm looking forward to working on these. The aim was to try to finish the pair by the end of August so that I could enter these into the summer sock camp as well. And I don't think that's going to happen, and I've accepted that, and it's okay. It's just knitting. I will get these done when I get them done, and I'm going to enjoy the process as I do it, not going to push myself too hard. But I'm very happy that I finished the one sock, and I'm very excited that I've cast on the second. And that's sort of one of my tricks to make sure I don't get second sock syndrome. Cast the second one on straight away. Even if I only do a couple of rounds on it, at least it's a start. Now I did make a little modification on the toe with this pattern. I was very keen to finish the texture detail section there. I didn't really want to finish it halfway through. So what it meant was that I didn't want to do a full length toe. So my toe looks a little bit short and odd, especially in the contrast yarn here. But it fits great. It fits wonderfully. I just had to adjust the counts on that. Basically, I would normally knit my toe to, I think, 16 stitches on each needle before I started doing decreases every round. So normally I do decrease every second round, and then from 16 stitches onwards I decrease every round until I have 8 stitches on each needle, and then I Kitchener. What I did here is I think I went to 18 and then started decreasing every round, and then I Kitchenered with 10 stitches on each needle, so a much shorter toe there. But it fits great, it looks great. I'm really very happy with it, and really as long as your sock fits and it's not flopping around on your foot, I think you can modify this as it suits your foot and your pattern. Now you'll notice I did put in contrast heel and toe here. That is because I didn't talk about the yarn I'm using. I've shared it before. I think it was a couple of episodes ago though. So for this project I am using these 2 yarns, and these are leftovers from my Slipstravaganza shawl. This is a bamboo nylon base. I'm pretty sure it's 75% bamboo, 25% nylon. These yarns are by Lovebird Lane. This one is called Biscotti, and I think this one is flushed. And so I only had 50 grams of each of these left, so I thought I'd use this as my main color and this as my contrast. And putting in the heels and toes in the contrast has meant that I will definitely not be playing yarn chicken with this main color. So I guess the other thing to note, again, being worried that I might have a yarn chicken situation on my hands, I didn't do as many repeats on the leg as the pattern calls for. I think I only did 1, 2, 3, 4 repeats as opposed to what the pattern says. Now it is a paid for pattern, so I don't want to give too much away there, but I still think that's a really good length for me. I usually do my legs around 50 rows or rounds, so 20 rounds for the calf and then 50 rounds for the legs. So this actually ended up being a very similar count to what I would normally do anyway, which I think worked out great, and I'm very happy to be progressing with this. Now I am knitting these on the recommended needle size. It's a 2.25mm or US 1 ChiaoGoo, and as you would have seen from my second start, I'm doing these ones on Magic Loop, and these are ChiaoGoo red lace needles as well. So I do find when it's a pattern sock, I tend not to enjoy using 9-inch circulars as much. I find having a little bit more flexibility and movement in my cable allows me to really enjoy the process of putting some cables in there or some extra textured stitches into the pattern, and this was really fun to knit. And now I didn't show you my project bag, and this is a beautiful project bag by the Knitting Dentist or the Knitting Den shop on Etsy. I will link her shop down below. She recently did have a shop update, and whilst her fabrics tend to change around, she has beautiful fabric choices every single time. So I do recommend you have a look at her shop if you're interested. She's got some she still has some stock left when I looked yesterday. So this is a lovely bag to hold that in. It's a perfect size for socks. It's nice and compact and very effective. So that is my half finished object for today. And let's move on to maybe another sock. I've got one more sock to show you, which that's not bad. 3 socks. So this next sock I talked about last time, and I think I did start it last time, but I have made a little bit more progress. So this is in my Sandy by the Lakeside bag. I love Sandy's bags. They just bring me so much joy. She's just got such an eye for fabrics as well. And I am knitting I said this wrong in the last episode. When I was editing, I was not very happy with myself. These are, let's say it correctly this time, string of heart socks. I feel like I need to look that up because now I'm questioning myself. This is what happens when you haven't posted on Instagram about it yet. You forget the names. I'm gonna look it up. I was right. It's the string of heart socks, and this is a pattern by Maddie Hobbs of the We Share Needles podcast, and I've made a little bit of progress. So this has got this beautiful cabled heart design going down the side here. Now the pattern is written wonderfully that if this is, I think, the left or right sock, I think this is the right sock, and then the left sock has the cable on the slightly on the other side. Now I am knitting the smallest size, which is 56 stitches, so obviously there's not as much of a change between one side and the other, but if you're knitting one of the bigger sizes, the 64 or the 72, you'll see a bigger panel of stockinette here on the side, sort of differentiating the left and the right a bit more. But I'm really excited about this. I think I spoke last time about using a cable needle, or actually a DPN as my cable needle, to do these little cables here that make up the love hearts. And after I stopped recording that, I did figure out how to do cables without a cable needle, thanks to some videos I watched, and in particular there was one by Nitty Natty that I really enjoyed. Now this has a progress keeper here showing you where I was when I recorded last, so yes, I've done a decent amount there from where that is. Now I am knitting this sock in the main colour, it's a bit windy. The main colour is called Light Magnolia Speckle, and it's by Down Under Dyer. Mel is a Sydney-based dyer, and that's her logo there. And this is 4-ply fingering, 75% merino, 25% nylon, and I love this yarn. This yarn is so soft and so lovely to work with. I really, really do enjoy this base. It is her soft sock base actually. And for the cuff here, I've used another leftover from my Slipstravaganza. This is by Lovebird Lane, and I cannot remember the name of this colorway. I'm really not doing well with names today. Of course, this was a COVID-inspired colorway. This is Quarantine 15. And I just thought they look really nice together, and I'm really happy with how they look there. Now I ended up starting this heel flap, and halfway through I realized that I forgot to change yarns, and I'm knitting it in the main colour. And I think I haven't picked it up, one, because I've got too many projects on the go, but also perhaps because I'm trying to decide whether to go back and use my contrast colour for that heel flap. So what do you think? Do you think I should use the contrast or continue on with the main colour? The main colour is so pretty, and I've got plenty of it, so it's not like I'm concerned about running out at any point. But yeah, I haven't picked it up since, this is like 1 day's worth of work, I think. Yeah, because I'm just not sure whether to go back and fix my omission of using a contrast yarn there. But okay, either way, I am knitting these on the recommended needle sizes. This is a 2.25mm or US one. You'll notice that I use the same needle size for every fingering weight yarn sock. 2x2 rib as written in the pattern, and I am using two 16-inch circulars. So you may, if you've seen my previous episodes, you may recall that I had some technical issues when I first used the 16-inch circulars, that I've now figured out what I was doing wrong, and it's a really enjoyable method. Though I must say, on occasion I do go into automatic pilot mode and I end up magic looping and getting everything on one needle again. But that's just me, that's just the way my brain works. So it is a really fun knit though, and I am looking forward to working on these some more. Definitely will not have these done by the end of summer sock camp, and the aim was to cast them on as a summer sock camp project, but it's fine. I tend to fly through vanilla socks, and pattern socks need a little bit more concentration, so I can't just pick these up with a couple of minutes of knitting time. I really have to dedicate a decent amount of time. So that is my final sock whip for today, and I will move on to my test knit. I think that is the next thing that I cast on. Actually, it's not looking as terrible as I thought. I thought there was more. Oh, there is one over there that I haven't brought over. Okay, so I am working on a test knit for Crystal Tea Knits, or Tara, and I talked about this one last time as well, and I've made a ton of progress on this, and I haven't picked it up in the last 2 or 3 days now, but it's still been great progress. Oh, I'm missing a sock whip. There's one more sock whip. I will bring that out. It's in my handbag from yesterday. I'll show you after this. So, okay, this is in a lovely bag by Ollie May Designs. She is an Australian bag maker, and I absolutely adore this bag. It is so pretty. This fabric's really lovely. And in here we have the Rose Garden Cowl test knit that I am working on. And here it is. So this design is in testing at the moment. I have been given the okay to talk about it. I am doing the 3 colour version. So these colours here are all minis, and I have just a couple of sections left here up the top to finish, and this will be done. Realistically, another couple of days of knitting, and well, even 1 day really if I'd only worked on this, and it will be finished. So last time I recorded, I was down here where this progress keeper is that I made out of polymer clay last time, and thank you all for your amazing support of my polymer clay experiment. Little flowers flipping over, but yeah, there's my little progress keeper. So I had done the pink section, and since I recorded last, I have finished all of the contrast colours, and I'm ready to just work with the main colour to finalise this lovely pattern. Now I am using some beautiful Finch Yarns yarn to knit this with. My main colour is called Almond Blossom, and then the minis here are from a 5 skein mini set. Oh, the light just changed. It is an unnamed mini set, so I'm not actually sure what these colourways are called, but I absolutely adore how they look together, and cannot wait to to be able to wear this really. Now I think I mentioned this is an advent, it's designed to be an advent pattern. So I definitely think that if you're looking for an Advent project to work on, there will be multiple versions of this released. I'm testing the 3-color version. There will be a 24 version too. But I think that this would be a very manageable Advent project if you're looking to use up some Advent minis, but obviously you could play with it and do what you like. I did use the main colour and then split it up with the 3 mini skeins. But I mean, you could do whatever you wanted with this, or you could follow the 24 skein version and use up your Advent minis for that, knitting on it a little bit each day. So that has been a lot of fun. The textures are just so much fun. There's a lot of interest in this pattern, and you feel like you're progressing really quickly, so it's a lovely, lovely knit. I am knitting this on my ChowGoo interchangeable red lace, I think it's red lace, interchangeable set on the 3.75mm or a US 5 needle. I'm using, I think, a 22-inch cable to knit this, and it's really lovely. I think I started it on a 16-inch. It was just a bit nicer to start on a shorter needle, but then once I had a little bit of, I guess, once there was more made, it just felt better to stretch the stitches out a little bit and put it on a longer cable. Yeah, it's really fun. Now, I don't know that there was anything else I wanted to say about this. I am hoping to finish this by the end of August, and I will definitely achieve that. And I will let you all know once this pattern is released for you to purchase from Tara, because it is a stunner, isn't it? I'm very happy with this. Now let me go find that sock whip that I completely forgot to put in with my pile of whips, and let's see, where on earth could I have put it? I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I would lose my head some days, honestly. So my final sock whip is in my summer sock camp bag by So Crazy Crafter. I have my pins by the Crazy Sock Lady here. Now this one is the 2021 one, and then this one is the one from 2020 from her first summer sock camp, and I absolutely adore those pins and this bag and everything to do with summer sock camp. So the final whip in here, actually it's another half finished object. Let me get a sock blocker somewhere up there, and I will pop this on to show you, because it is a bit of a beauty. I can't believe I forgot about this project. That's just showing you how much I've got on my mind today. Okay, so my next half finished object are my Desert Vista Dyeworks socks Desert Vista Dyeworks socks, and this is a monthly knit along that I am participating in, which means that I am knitting 1 pair of socks every month in Desert Vista Dyeworks yarn. You must start after the 1st of the month and be finished by the end of the month to be eligible to participate, and you must use only Desert Vista Dyeworks yarn. Now I think this, I get this wrong every time, but I think the knit along is called the 7th annual monthly Desert Vista Dyeworks knit along. I think that sounds about right. So this is my first sock, and this is in the colorway Big Bang, and I think this is such a fun colorway. So again, I've done a 20 row, well actually no, it's not a 20 round cuff for this. With this one, I think it's more like 15 or 16. I just sort of changed or stopped doing the cuff once the color change happened there. And then I'm marking every 10 rounds with these light bulb stitch markers. The different colored one there shows where I started the heel flap. Now, I think I've mentioned before, I don't like doing a heel flap too much. If I am using self-striping yarn, I don't like to disrupt the sequence of stripes, but I thought I'd try it with this one, and I am actually really happy with how it worked out. So we have the heel flap and gusset there, and then I think it's 63, around 63 rounds for my foot. I wear a European size 36 to 37 shoe, which I don't know what that is in US. In Australian, it's a US 5.5 to 6. So yeah, that's the length that I knit my socks to. And then I do a rounded toe here. Now, I'm pretty sure I had a start on this the last time I showed you, but I appear not to have put a progress keeper on there. I don't know where I was, which is unusual. I usually like to put a progress keeper on to show you. But I have started the second sock, and the second sock is progressing nicely. I've been working on this one quite a bit, and I'm actually halfway through the heel flap for this one. So I'm halfway through the heel flap. You can see I'm actually halfway through a row, which is wonderful. I think I did that on purpose though, so I don't lose my little progress keep or stitch marker here that I've held onto the 9-inch circular. Now I have discovered when I was doing the DK vanilla socks that I can actually do the heel flap and gusset on the 9-inch circular without changing it to magic loop, and that has been a bit of a game changer for me. So I've done both of these in the same way and haven't bothered to change the needles out to do the heel flap and gusset. It actually works quite well. I don't feel like there's not enough there to make it enjoyable. And again, I'm marking my every 10 rounds down the side there. And yeah, these will need to be finished by the 31st of August. So I have a week to finish these, and I really don't think there'll be an issue. I'm almost there. Almost there. And definitely lunchtime knitting at work and any sort of opportunity I get to sort of sit and knit while I'm waiting for things, that's when this usually gets worked on. Unless, of course, I realise the day before that I'm not done yet, and then I'll dedicate some evening knitting time to this as well, because I really want to get these done by the end of the month so I can start my September socks, which I haven't picked my yarn out yet for. I tend to do that a couple of days or a day before. But yep, August socks are coming along beautifully. I'm really happy with the colour and the way that they're knitting up. Now I think I mentioned before, I normally do about a 50 round leg, but because I did a slightly shorter cuff here, I think this one's more like 55 maybe rounds. I think I've done it a little bit longer. Yeah, and that's the only real change from my usual way to knit socks, vanilla socks in particular, that I do. So that's that, which is lovely. And I am using the progress keepers I'm using here just in this little tin. I have made up a bunch of these, and I am chucking one in each project bag basically. That is oops, just dropped a bunch of them. So there's progress keepers in there, little light bulb stitch markers, and they're all rose gold, and they make me very happy. I really am going to have to find those ones that I've dropped. But yeah, they've been fun to have in each project bag because I'm always scrambling around for more light bulb stitch markers when I'm knitting socks, and it's nice to know that I don't have to keep my notions pouch with me, that I have my notions with me when I need them. I have one more whip to share with you, and this one is very special because it's part of our podcast Knit Along that we are co-hosting with Lucy of This Nanny Knits. It is our Anchors Obsessed Cal that we're currently hosting. This Cal started on, I think, the 9th of August and is running through till the 9th of October for 2 months. Lucy and I have cast on the Anchors summer shirt, which I don't usually print the pattern, but I did this time. So this is the pattern here. So it's the Anchors summer shirt by Petite Knit. It's knit in the DK weight yarn, and it's a summer t-shirt, sort of in a cotton blend. So I cast this on, I guess about a week ago maybe. Yeah, I think it was about a week ago. Actually, Mum and I met up last week on Saturday, and we cast it on together, and that was such a fun day. We had such a good time. We went to our local yarn shop just to make sure we had the right cable lengths, because we are obsessive caster honourers and we were running out of cables, and I also needed some new tips because I had to pull off my tips from the lightweight hipster to be able to swatch with, because apparently I needed to size up a little bit. I didn't quite match gauge. I might show you my gauge swatch first actually. So I think I've mentioned in past episodes that I'm not a great gauge swatcher. Certainly not for baby gifts. Shawls I don't gauge swatch for at all. Socks I don't gauge swatch for. When it comes to garments though, I usually do, and depending on the yarn I'm using and how familiar I am with that yarn will depend how good a gauge swatch I do. But with this yarn I have used it before, but not in knitting. I've only crocheted with it before. So this is the Kobu yarn by Lion Brand. I'm jumping around all over the place. So it's Kobu by Lion Brand in the colorway Pink Rose, or color 101. And it's so pretty. Last time I spoke with you, I was waiting for this to arrive very impatiently because I really wanted to start the gauge swatch process. But it arrived a few days later, and when I started gauge swatching, I did the first gauge the first night, very, very motivated to do that. And I was really happy with it. I thought, yes, I've got gauge. And then I washed it. And then this yarn didn't do what I expected it to do. And I was off gauge. So what I end up doing is I leave my gauge on the cable when I wash it, because I don't like to have to knit a whole new gauge swatch. I don't like to cut my yarn if possible, just in case I need to use this later. So I ended up knitting a second gauge swatch down below. So you can see here my first gauge swatch, and then I started my second gauge swatch and identified it with some yarn overs as to the needle size I was using. So this is in the recommended 4mm or US 5, 6. I cannot remember the US terms. The 4mm is a US 6. And then I swatched on the 4.5mm, 4.5mm US 7, and I just have 7 yarn overs here to indicate that that is the needle size I used, and this gave me a much better gauge. And now it's all a bit squished up because it's been in the bottom of the project bag. I gauge swatched in the round because this project is knit in the round, so I carried my yarn behind my work with plenty of give there. I try not to be too tight on that carry, which just looks like a lot of excess yarn at the back there. And it just allows me to then lay this flat to be able to measure my gauge properly once it's dried. When I gauge, I add quite a few extra stitches. So I think the gauge for this pattern is listed as 20 stitches across and then 28 rows down. I think I cast on around 30 to 35 stitches for this, just to make sure that I had that I didn't have to worry about these loosey-goosey stitches on the edges here that sort of get misshapen, and they're not really a good accurate representation of the gauge. So yes, I was a good gauge swatcher this time, and I'm using the 4.5mm or US 7 needles to knit this project with, and we have a good start. So this is how far I've gotten so far. Don't know if that's showing up greatly. The cable is probably a little bit too short, but it's a beautiful yoke, and it's a 1x1 rib in a number of sections there, with some increases between the sections. It is a paid for pattern, so I won't give much away there, but it's a very enjoyable knit. Now, I think I've talked about this before. I've always struggled with making sure my 1x1 rib looks neat. So I use, I think it's called combination knitting, to do 1x1 rib in the round, which means that I knit as normal, but I purl anti-clockwise. Clockwise? It essentially ends up reorientating words, my stitches. So you'll see that my stitches are facing opposite directions, and it means that when you're purling, your stitches get tightened up a little bit more, and it just makes the knit stitches look a bit neater. It's a technique that I've used for a lot of 1x1 in the round over the last year or so, and I really do enjoy it much more than I enjoy it for flat 1x1. I feel like I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do that without it looking a little bit haphazard, because obviously your purl side's going to be a little bit different to your knit side when you're knitting flat. But in the round, every round is the same, so you've got a nice consistent 1x1 rib. Get the words out there. Now, one little hiccup I had the last time I knit on this the other night is that I found 3 knots in my wool, in my yarn, and that was rather frustrating to say the least. But you'll see here I had to cut where the knots were, so there's one that was there, that's my cast on, then there was another one there, and then the third one there. So what I do when I find a knot in yarn is I cut that knot off, and I think I took some photos, so I might see if I can insert some images here. I cut the yarn and I basically treat it like I'm finishing one ball of yarn and starting another ball. Doing that over 3 consecutive rows was rather frustrating, but it is what it is. I love this yarn regardless, and honestly I've used this yarn for another project and did not experience the knots, so I just think this ball happens to be that way. I'll keep you informed if I find that in the other balls. But it was just this one section of the ball. I didn't have it in the first sort of 2 sections of that rib. It's only on this third section that I came across that. And I have been a very proactive knitter, and I've already tied in these ends. So I don't love tying in ends at the end of a project when you're having to switch yarns regularly. So you'll notice here that they're already tied in and they're secured, so that when I go to do the finishing of this, I don't have an extra 6 ends to weave in on top of the normal ends that accompany the finished sweater. So yes, I'm actually really enjoying this knit. I feel like if I'm able to get on top of these other whips, I'll get this done in no time. It's really lovely. This yarn is beautiful to knit with. It is a little bit splitty in some ways, but I'm not noticing it getting splitty as I'm working with it. But it has, I guess, the potential to be a bit splitty. It is quite a few strands and it's not very tightly plied. So just thought I'd mention that, but I am enjoying this yarn, and I mean, I've crocheted with it before, so I knew this about this yarn when I started with it, and I'm very happy with knitting with it. And I did forget to again mention my project bag. I am housing this beautiful project in another Knitting Den shop bag. And I decided to use this bag because I used it when I made my niece's Anchors jacket. And I just thought, well, this can be my Anchors project bag for now. But yeah, so this is a really beautiful bag, a fun knit. My only garment currently on the needles, but I have some extra, or something special that I really want to cast on once I get a little bit more on top of my current whips, as I keep saying. So that is all the whips except for my lightweight hipster shawl. Now I did put a couple of rows into that, but I don't see the point in showing it. There's not been that much growth because I had to take the needles off to swatch for the Anchors summer shirt. So right now it doesn't have needles attached, even though I did end up buying some tips that I now have a couple of an extra set of tips in that size in case I do need another US 7. Which I clearly did this time. So that is another one that's sort of in a bit of timeout right now, but I'll get back to that shortly because I do love that project. But as you can see, there has been quite a bit of knitting in the last couple of weeks. So those are all of my projects. I'm looking around my bedroom here and I don't think there's anything else to show you, which is exciting, but I will move on to acquisitions. And I don't have many acquisitions, to be honest. I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful about just buying yarn without a plan, which I haven't been very good at, let's be real. But I'm trying to be a bit more thoughtful, and I'm also conscious of the fact that I rearranged my stash a couple of weeks ago, and there is so much beautiful yarn in my stash. I really want to use it, so I'm trying to be a little bit more self-controlled with my yarn buying. But I did buy one skein of yarn the last 2 weeks when I was in at my local yarn shop, buying the extra tips for my Anchors summer shirt. I couldn't resist looking at all the yarn. Now, our local yarn store, Yarn Trader, has recently moved locations. They've moved maybe 2 shops down from where they were originally, but it's a much bigger space. So walking into the store the first time after the move was just so joyful to see this blossoming of this amazing yarn store that was already in its own right a very beautiful place to visit, and now has this extra space and this extra stock, and is just such a welcoming place to go. I did take some footage of that trip, so I might pop that in at some point in this video. But while I was there, obviously I looked at all the yarns and struggled to control myself, but I only walked out with one skein. And I actually ended up picking up this Hedgehog Fibres skein. It's a Hedgehog Fibres 100% merino wool single, and it's in the colourway Ozone. The bottom of that's undone a little bit there. And I do have a plan for this beautiful skein of yarn. I had been looking at Ravelry, I think, that morning before we went, and found a shawl that I really want to knit. And when I was in there, I know that I have had one of the yarns that I wanted to use for this shawl, but I thought I might need something new that I didn't already own to go with it to make this shawl in the way that I envisaged it, the words. So I am actually going to be pairing this, and I'll talk about the pattern in a minute, with this beautiful yarn here. So this is a mohair, and it's called Aldinga Drop Off. It's a myrtle lace by Cola Girl, who is a local to me dyer. It's a mohair silk, 70% kid mohair, 30% silk, and 420 meters to 50 grams. And I just think that these two look so good together. I feel like it's really dark on my viewfinder here, but maybe that's picking up better than it looks. Oh, maybe back here it's a better representation. So yeah, I want to knit these two together in a shawl that I found. Now the shawl that I found is called Uptown, and I'll show you a picture of this one because I was just very enamored with it when I found it. Now the pattern that I found on Ravelry is called Uptown, and it holds, or it's knit with the merino single and a mohair together to create a squishy, beautiful shawl. So that is it there. And this pattern is called Uptown, and it's Uptown by Susie Hellman. Hellman? I think it's Hellman. And yeah, so that is my next shawl that I want to cast on. Once I finish the Lightweight Hipster, I think I'm going to try to make myself finish some things before this is started, because honestly I came home from the shop and all I wanted to do was wind these up and get them started, but self-control and a little bit of sanity had to prevail, and I thought let's focus on some of these whips that I've got going. I had just started the Anchors summer shirt that day, so it seemed a little ridiculous to start a new shawl that I wouldn't have time to work on anyway. So yeah, I'm very excited about this colour combo and can't wait to see this project started. And then I haven't made any other acquisitions yarny wise, but I did buy a basket to store my whips in, and I'll show you that because I'm very happy with this purchase. So this is the basket that I bought. It's rather large, And I thought this would be nice just next to my knitting space, just to keep them all in one place. Otherwise I feel like I'm surrounded by project bags. I picked this up from our local Kmart store, and I'll link it down below. If you're in Australia, feel free to check it out. I guess if you're in the States, you might struggle to find that, or in the UK, but just you might find something similar if you're keen to sort out your whips. And when I first bought this, I thought, wow, that's probably a little bit big. I'm probably going a little bit overboard with the size. And then I put all my whips in it and it was overflowing. I'll see if I can get a photo and insert it to show you what it looks like with all my current whips in it, to show you that it has great capacity, but maybe my whip count is a little high right now. So those are all of my acquisitions. Now I thought I'd talk about some projects that I'm keen to start apart from that shawl. There are two things that I really want to put on my needles soon. And when I say soon, again, I mean once I've cleared some needles of some projects. So the first thing I want to do is, as part of the Anchors knit along that I'm co-hosting with Lucy, I would like to cast on something for a baby. And I am thinking, I'm still undecided about which pattern. Part of me thought, actually a part of me still thinks that it might be the Anchors jacket that I knit for my niece recently, but I would like to try adapting it to steek it, to knit it in the round and steek it. Now I've never steeked a project before, but it's something that I've been wanting to try. And I guess something I've learnt is, if I want to try something, let's not take a massive chunk, let's take it in bite-sized pieces. And if I do it on the baby sweater, then it's not as much of an investment of time in knitting if something goes wrong, and it's a great learning experience. So these are the two yarns I've pulled out of my stash that I'm thinking of holding together. They're both fingering weight yarns. They're acrylic. This one's 100% acrylic, I think. And this one I think is acrylic nylon. Yes, 60% acrylic, 20% nylon. And these are both out of my stash. This one, Baby Wonder here, I think is it a Lincraft? It's a Spotlight yarn. So this is a Spotlight yarn that my local big box store. So Spotlight is sort of the equivalent of a Michaels, I guess, here in Australia. So I bought this ages ago, but probably when I first started knitting. And this is one that I picked up at, oh gosh, somewhere. I don't even remember where I got this one. But this one is another 4-ply Baby Super Soft, and this one is in the colour Apricot, and this is the colourway. Does it have a name? It's got a number, which is a very long name. I cannot find a name of this on here. It's no name. It's got a lot of numbers in the colour number. 802-55592. But I just thought they'd look really nice mailed together to make a little Anchors jacket for a baby. But when I said I didn't know which other patterns to look at, I did see they've got a baby onesie, they've got a baby dress, they've got all these other cute things, but I think I've just realised in my head what I wanted to do with it again. Yeah, I'm thinking the Anchors jacket, but adapt it to in the round and try steeking it. So that is a plan. And this would also count towards the Anchors Obsessed cowl. Now that knit along is for any Anchors pattern. You don't have to do the summer shirt. Anything that is by Petite Knit and has Anchors in the title is eligible for that knit along. Now to talk about that knit along, because I feel like I glossed over that a little bit, it is run on Ravelry and Instagram. On Instagram you can tag your progress photos and posts with the Anchors Obsessed cowl hashtag, and on Ravelry just pop your finished objects in the finished object thread. They will be eligible for prizes in there, and there's a chatter thread as well that you're welcome to have a chat and see what other people have decided to make and how they're progressing. There's already quite a good conversation happening in there, and I try to dip in there a couple of times a week around work commitments and things, so it's really fun to see that people are chatting in there. So yes, that is a wish list project that I will get to shortly-ish, hopefully within this knit along period. And as I drop a bunch of things, I'll show you I'll talk about my other wish list project that I'm very keen to start. My very first sweater that I knit for myself was the Easy Eyelet Yoke. And recently it had a little bit of a disaster and ended up going through the washing machine, unfortunately, by a very helpful person who was just trying to help me out and do a load of washing, and it felted. Totally felted. So I did have already some yarn in my stash to knit another one. Sorry for the crinkling. It's been in my stash for a while, and I always think it's a bit safer to leave it in the packaging if I don't know exactly when I'll knit with it. But I've got some Lion Brand Chainette, which is what the original pattern was written in. And this is just, I don't know if it's white, it's cream. It's in the colour cream by Lion Brand. And I will be knitting a new Easy Eyelet Yoke with this at some point soon. Now, I've knit a lot of sweaters since I've knit that one, and I will be adjusting it a little bit, and I think I'll be adding a few short rows to it. I just haven't quite decided how, but I'll talk about that once I'm there. But I just recall that being such an enjoyable quick knit, and I loved that finished object. It was like my favourite sweater to wear. It was in this baby pink colour, and it was in a We Are Knitters, I think, Wool in the Gang. It was in the Wool in the Gang alpaca yarn, and it was so soft and so lovely. I actually wore it in one of my episodes. I'll see if I can pop some footage in of me showing it actually, or maybe of me wearing it. But that was just one of my absolute favourite knits that I wore all the time. So I'm really keen to get another one on my needles because it's just such a great item of clothing. The fit's really nice. The drape was really lovely. Obviously this is a different yarn. I didn't use the recommended yarn for the first one. I ended up, I think, getting that other yarn, and then subsequently I bought the recommended yarn, and I'm looking forward to knitting that up and having that finished item again. And the process of knitting it was fun too, so it'll be lovely to knit it again. Obviously I had planned to do it if I bought more yarn. So now that I've made a mess everywhere, let's talk about what I've been watching, what I've been doing, what I've been enjoying, and what I am planning to do. Let's go with that. Okay, so some podcasts that I have been watching and really enjoying. I've taken some notes as I've been watching them the last couple of weeks, because I find I get to recording and then I go blank and I forget half the things that I wanted to say because I'm not great at taking show notes. So now I've started, as I'm watching something and an idea pops into my mind, I'm making myself a note in Google Docs so I can just keep adding to that. And then it's like I'm pre-writing my show notes before I've sat down to record, which is great. So a podcast that I was really enjoying these last couple of weeks, Holly and Bella, is from Devon in England, and I've been watching Cherie for a long time. I just really enjoy listening to her talk about her projects, her plans, her makes and her acquisitions. She's just very inspiring and lovely podcast to watch, and I'm sure most of you would have heard of her before. She's very iconic, and in particular in the last episode that I watched, she talked or showed her 6-day kid blanket that she had crocheted. And I am an occasional crocheter. I don't crochet often, but I do enjoy the process. Once I have a project that I want to work on, I really do like crochet. And that pattern just seemed like such a lovely baby knit, and I've got a baby gift to make very soon and thought that that could be a good idea. So I just wanted to mention that because that was a really inspiring moment for me. I'm like, yes, I think that may be something I'll consider. Just need to find some yarn for it. And another, actually I've got a few here, but Knit All the Yarn podcast, Lisa, she has just finished knitting the Painting Waves shawl by Stephen West, and I was absolutely blown away by this project and was so impressed by how quickly she knit it. God, she's speedy, this woman. I'm so amazed, Lisa. You blow me away every time. She records weekly. It's a weekly podcast, and she always has so many beautiful projects. A lot of socks. If you're into sock knitting, highly recommend Lisa. And yes, she's recently gotten onto a shawl kick, and Stephen West in particular. So seeing that painting wave shawl has just re-inspired me thinking about potentially looking at using up my advents from previous years. I've got 2 advents. So one has been allocated to the Cozy Comfort Throw, which I talked about in the last episode, and my very first one that I got through Ashen Oak Yarns, who is no longer dying. That one I've been trying to decide what to make with it, and I think this may be it. The Painting Wave Shawl by Stephen West. So I just wanted to mention that. Now I also found a couple of new podcasts. So my North Knit Corner, Anne, is in Norway, released her first English speaking podcast, and I really enjoyed spending some time with her. She does normally podcast in Norwegian, but she thought she'd try an English one, and I really did enjoy her content. I think she's playing around with some hand dyeing as well as knitting, and she knits some beautiful things. So I highly recommend you check her out. I'll pop a link down below. And the other one that was a new one to me is Stitches and Jacks, and this is Karen from Northwest England in West Lancashire. I think I've said that correctly. Lancashire. So she is originally from the south of England, but now living in the northwest, and she has a beautiful podcast that I really enjoyed as well. I'm looking forward to catching up on some of her previous episodes. Karen's just a joy to listen to as well, some gorgeous projects. And now I also came across, I was catching up on some of my favorites, because obviously we were away for 3 weeks at the end of June and early July. And so I feel like I missed a lot of content. I'm sorry, I've got a hair in my face. I feel like I missed a lot of content while we were on that trip. And so I've still been slowly catching up on all my favorites. And I noticed that Anastasia from Free Your Sheep is currently hosting a Free Your Summer Knits knit along. Now this ends at the end of August, which means it's about a week. And I thought to myself while I was watching this, maybe I can finish my Anchor's summer shirt to be able to enter into that cal as well. Grand ideas, grand plans. I don't know that I would actually be able to finish that in the week, but hey, it's an aim, it's an idea. If I do succeed, that's wonderful. If I don't, that's absolutely fine. But I thought if any of you are currently knitting any summer tops that might be able to be eligible for that knit along, check out Anastasia's podcast. She talks about it in her last couple of episodes, and she's also got a Ravelry group where I think you post your FOs to, or you can tag Free Summer Knits on Instagram as well to show your progress. In addition, We Share Needles are doing another summer tea mail as well. So their summer tea mail is crochet, knit, whatever summer tea that you're making. And theirs are due by the 29th of August. So again, check out We Share Needles. If you are making any summer knits right now, any summer tops, it's a good idea to be able to enter them into other competitions, podcasts, knit-alongs. I find knit-alongs so inspiring. I find them that they push me to achieve things with my knitting rather than just stagnate and maybe not make much progress on projects. So I hope that mentioning some of those will bring some inspiration to you. And finally, Nitty Natty of Love in Stitches is currently running the Fall Garment Make-Along, so Fall Garment Mail. And I wanted to mention this one because this one has just started, and it's any garment, so not accessories, but any garment, and she outlines the rules in her Ravelry group, so I do encourage you to check that out if you're keen. But any garment is eligible for entry. Now I think this one runs through for a couple of months at least, maybe 2 to 3 months, I don't recall. But my Easy Eyelet yoke, I would definitely like to enter into that. And realistically, my Anchor's summer shirt will be eligible for entry into that one as well. So I do recommend that you check out Nitty Natty's projects, or Knitting Natty's podcast and have a look at some more information about that. Now, her podcast is called Love in Stitches, and she is a very wonderful community-inspired knitter, and she brings you in, and she's a nurturing kind of soul. She's absolutely lovely to watch and listen to and knit with. She is knitting a Hohi pattern, which is, I think, the long line cardigan, and it's a beautiful, beautiful long line pattern, and it's knit with some stripes. And she's using a gorgeous set by Moon Glow Yarn Company, or Moon Glow Yarn Co. Whitney is the dyer from there, and I absolutely love the colour choices that Natalie has chosen. I might, if there's still any in the Etsy shop, I might link it down below for you so you can have a look. But it's this beautiful pink fade set that she's come up with, and you all know I love pink. So if you're interested in a cardigan of some sort, if you like a long cardigan that's very easy to wear, that might be a nice pattern for you to think about as well. And I am super inspired to consider it. As you can see, I've got a lot of ideas of knitting projects on my mind right now, and I just wish there were more hours every day to knit. That would be the dream, to have unlimited knitting time and not to get sleepy, not to need sleep. That would be great. Okay, so I think that brings me to the end of my content for today. I think I've been chatting at you for a long time. To just, I guess, catch you up on what's been happening in life quickly. I went to a friend's birthday yesterday, and it was an absolute blast. I haven't seen this friend in almost a year, which is terrible, but I guess those are the times we are living in at the moment, where there's constant restrictions and lockdowns, and that changes plans. But I got to spend the evening with some old work friends and celebrating our dear friend and her birthday, and that was an absolute joy. What else has been happening? I feel like this weekend's been very busy, and I'm just trying to recall what else has happened. This afternoon I am going with my mum and my sister to the Van Gogh exhibition that is happening here in Adelaide. I'll see if I can maybe capture some of that while we're out, and I could add it maybe to the end of this episode. I'll see how I go. I don't know whether photography is allowed in there, but that will be an extremely fun afternoon out with the girls. So it's my mum, my sister and my niece. So the girls are going out and checking out some art today, which we're very excited about. And other than that, work is work. There is an exciting thing. So on Thursday, I got my first dose of my COVID vaccination. I had no real side effects at all, a little bit of a dizzy spell, maybe a slight headache, but really nothing specifically, well, nothing terrible. A sore arm, because obviously there's an injection there. So the injection itself didn't hurt at all. I don't like injections. I get the flu shot every year because I like to take that precaution, and I really dislike getting the flu shot because I can feel the flu shot going into my arm. But with this one, it was over and done with before I realized that she'd finished, sort of thing. It was super quick, super painless. So that was really lovely. Australia's been pretty slow on the rollout of the vaccine, and the eligibility levels have been gradually released. This week they've opened it up to anyone over 16. So that's been a lovely change. I'm trying to get my oldest son an appointment, which is a real struggle right now. And once the three of us, so my oldest son is eligible now, my husband's had his first dose, I've had my first dose, and then there'll just be my youngest son, who is a little bit more vulnerable. But he's 13 and really not far away if they were to expand it to the greater population again. That happened this week, which was brilliant. And other than that, it's just been a lot of work, which I think it was the work conversation that reminded me of the COVID shot, because I did it during the work day. So that was something to be excited about, I guess. So I'm going to leave you there, but I will first thank you all for watching. If you're new here, welcome. I really should have said that at the start. And if you're still watching, I'm so grateful that you've decided to stick around. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. It's so lovely to have you come back and comment and engage with me through this podcast. It's been so fun to meet so many of you virtually through this medium. I can't words today. I think it's time to drink my coffee that has been sitting here the whole time. I even forgot to tell you I was drinking coffee. Today I'm drinking it in my Summer Sock Camp mug because it is the last week of Summer Sock Camp 2021. So enjoy your knitting, enjoy your socks if you're knitting socks, and I look forward to catching up with you again in a couple of weeks. Happy knitting, happy drinking your coffee, and I'm making this awkward again, so I'm just going to say goodbye. Goodbyes are hard for me. Happy knitting.